Let's continue with that leading story now. Welcoming Professor Isaac Khambule, who's a professor of political economy at the University of Johannesburg, or UJ. Professor, it's good to have you with us. So another long-standing company exiting our shores, citing stagnant business output. Briefly talk to us about how we got to this place in the first place as an emerging economy. We've just heard, of course, about some of the rebates that the company has decided they will be settling with the affected workers.
Good day, and thank you so much for the invitation, and as well as good day to all the viewers at home. So if we look at this particular issue, it's not something that is only affecting the South African economy, but it's affecting the entire global market because of issues that are related to demand. And then again, if you look at the South African context, it's an issue that is related to the influx of cheaper tires in the South African context because of lack of tariffs. So it was bound to create particular competition for companies such as Goodyear, and unfortunately we are where we are today, meaning that South Africa is continue to deindustrialize, of which again comes up with a lot of unemployment, as we have seen that Eastern Cape is one of the provinces that has the highest unemployment at 42%, and now things are likely to get worse.
Absolutely, Professor. I mean, with the current high rates of unemployment right across the sectors and the country, I mean, we keep hearing of investments and new deals being struck, supposedly streaming into the country, but we have the 30% tariffs that we're currently dealing with. Whole sectors are downscaling and shutting down, and foreign investment is also stagnant. There were calls for the country to look elsewhere for sustainability, while before the US had cut off aid and announced tariffs. Is our government working at a snail pace, or they just generally have an inadequate mitigating policy structure? What do you think?
It's both an issue of working at a snail pace and as well as basically lacking foresight in terms of what needs to be done to address some of the current issues that we are facing. I mean, you look at the issue of the tariffs. We are one of the few governments in the world that have failed to negotiate with the US to come up with better deals. I mean, the US understand that it has been a close partner for South Africa over the last 30 years or so. And now we are here, we do not have the influence that we used to have. And then secondly, again, from the leading government as well in terms of the government of national unity, it doesn't seem that there is an appetite to fix the current issues that we are facing, because we understand it's an issue of deindustrialization, it's an issue of South Africa also trying to compete internationally. But what are we doing to build local firms that have demand in South Africa rather than trying to seek foreign markets? And again, that's on its own within the manufacturing space. We know in 1994, the GDP that was contributed by manufacturing on its own stood at 24%, but now it stands at less than 20%, 12%, of which again shows that we have deindustrialized, we've lost close to 1 million jobs within the manufacturing industry. And how do we then compete with countries such as China that have overtaken the global industry in terms of their value added? So these are some of the key issues that we seem to not have sufficient responses to.
But Professor, I mean, let's look at some of the cited reasons, by the likes of Goodyear as well as ArcelorMittal. What I find interesting for me is that when we look here at some of the issues that, of course, Goodyear put forward, the triple BEE policies are quite key in some of their complaints, saying that they are a huge contributing factor in disinvestment decisions. So how do we move forward then in the various sectors if we are to attract international investment, but we still have, of course, companies that do not want to abide by our local policies?
I mean, that's one of the core problems that we are facing, because we are getting companies that are saying they are anti-transformation that the South African government wants to see, because we know BEE is in place so that we can try to improve and ensure that the majority of Africans are able to be integrated into the economy. For example, in this particular case, we're talking about a particular company that was in South Africa from the 1940s. It has seen the heydays of the apartheid era, yet it did not want to withdraw. And then today, companies are saying they're withdrawing because there seems to be this global agenda that is trying to say, South Africa, do away with your transformative laws if you want us to invest. But the key problem is there is not responsible entrepreneurship from all of these companies, because they are saying do away with the key component that is supposed to drive the nation's growth and development and ensure that we have a sustainable development that benefits everyone in the country. So I think these are some of the particular issues. And lastly, there seems to be that particular global agenda. I mean, the likes of the IMF, the World Bank, the US have come out and say South Africa needs to do away with BE in order to grow the economy. But we know there is just a farce, because it is of the idea that the ANC is slowly losing power. So should it lose power, then there won't be a need for BEE. But that is not necessarily accurate, because BEE is part of our constitutional requirements to ensure that we increase the representation of Africans in terms of the mainstream economy. So here, I think the government just needs to find partners that are willing to invest and also abide by our transformative agenda.
And Professor, you spoke about the fact that it looks like we're slowly heading towards the deindustrialization of the country. So how serious are the threats then to future manufacturing in the country?
I mean, they're quite dire. I mean, if you look at this particular case with Goodyear moving, for example, majority of the manufacturing plants in the Eastern Cape, focusing on your BMW, your VW, those require Goodyear tires. So now it means the cost of doing business would be higher for those manufacturing plants. And do they then end up saying we are going to stay despite the cost of these manufacturing plants? Or are we going to relocate to other provinces where we feel there are better service delivery, where we feel they will be closer to the economies of scale in terms of reducing our cost of doing business? So there is going to be the core issue that we are going to face, I think, from now on as we deindustrialize, and if the government does not have any clear ideas to what it's supposed to do. But I think we should be grateful that the IDC has also come on board. But I think the key issue there is that particular risk that is emerging going to be sustainable in the long run and ensure that we continue doing business, or it is just going to be something that is just created so that we can say we try to save Goodyear or we try to save the manufacturing sector in the Eastern Cape.
But are there any fast solutions to this impasse, Professor?
Again, here, I think it's just an issue of political willingness from the government to say, yes, we understand Goodyear wants to leave, but what do we do as the government to say these are the incentives that we are going to give you? Are we going to impose particular tariffs against the cheap tires that are coming into the country that are not even manufactured, by the way, in the country? And this is something that we are seeing as a ripple effect within the automotive sector, because we know most of the Chinese cars that are coming into the country tend to be cheaper. Thereby, the companies that have invested in the country for over decades now are suffering. So what do you do? And the country, again, needs to bear a point whereby they say if some of the cheaper goods that are coming to the country are going to come, then let's implement particular policies that say they need to be manufactured in the country, so that we know that if we lose jobs in terms of other manufacturing companies, at least we are also benefiting from particular jobs. But currently, there is not the case, because the country is unable to negotiate a good deal with those who are importing cheaper goods in the country.
But we have BRICS partners. That's where we should start looking, Professor. We'll use those relationships to the maximum. Professor, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much, as always, for your valuable input. Professor Isaac Khambule is a professor of political economy at the University of Johannesburg, also weighing in on the implications on the economy that, of course, the closure of Goodyear is going to have on the province of the Eastern Cape as well as South Africa generally.